what you've earned. Now, we're getting close to the end, and your brains are getting full, and you're thinking, this cannot get any more exciting. But it can. And by the way, you're probably wondering, when a dog goes in disguise like this, he's going incognito. It's going to get more interesting because I'm going to tell you how you can increase your clout score. Now, here's the bad news. We don't know what this formula is. We don't know what the secret sauce is, and it's not this. This is just something I made up. But what we can do is look at what's going on with academic studies. Lots of universities are studying this new idea of online influence, and we can look at what they're finding and come up with a pretty good idea of what clout is looking at. And here's even better news. You don't have to read these studies. I've done it for you. And I've come up with this model. There seems to be these three different strings you can pull to have a pretty immediate impact on your clout score. If your clout score is below 30, it's pretty easy to move it up. If it's above 30, it gets more difficult. So let's look at these three things and how they were really used. So when I was working on the book, I met this guy in Washington, D.C. He's a digital scientist, and he is one of these people that just hates clout. He says, this is a big game. We can manipulate this any way we want. I said, well, let's give this a try. What if you started working in these three areas? Could you increase your clout score? So he gave it a try. And the first one he started to work on was his audience. Now, behind every social media success story, there are two foundational elements. One, a content strategy. You've got to have the content, right? Number two, the network strategy. It doesn't work unless your content is ignited, unless it moves. So you've got to surround yourself with people who have some propensity to be interested in you. One of the academic studies I read showed that people usually don't want to share things. They hesitate to share things on the internet. So you've got to systematically and mindfully build an audience around you who is interested in you. And one of the ways he did it was by beginning to attend Twitter chats. So he could interact with people, he could find people who were interested in him. He started to follow them and, over time, built up an audience. The second thing is you've got to create or aggregate content that people want to share. And in my classes, I use this model called RITE, R-I-T-E. Is the content relevant, interesting, timely, and entertaining? And entertaining is usually the hard one because, let's face it, we don't usually sit around our companies thinking, how can we be more entertaining today? And yet, think about the content you like to share. Chances are there's something interesting about it, something unique, unexpected, maybe even funny. There's an entertainment value that makes you want to share it. Well, when my friend started sharing content on the internet, he found that his content wasn't interesting enough for people to share. So he created a blog. He decided he needed to create original content. He needed to provide provocative content that people would want to comment on and share. So he created a blog. And then finally, you've got to engage consistently. Social media is social. And this is something that so many individuals and companies miss. Somehow, when you get this digital divide between us and other people, they forget that there are real people behind these avatars that you see on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. And social media isn't B2B. It's not B2C. It's P to P. It's person to person. You've got to connect. You've got to be helpful for this to work. You've got to engage. So he was very, very active. He was he made an effort to be helpful and to share other people's content. And at the end of the day, he increased his Klout score by 30 points in 45 days. And he told me, aha, I've done it. I've showed that you can gain Klout. And I said, let me ask you something. Are you more influential? And he paused and he said, I am. So here's the irony of this. These three things that I've just talked about, this really represents a best practice for anybody trying to have an effective presence on the social web. So my advice is, if you just stick to the fundamentals, surround yourself with people who care about you, create compelling content that they want to share, and be helpful. Engage with people. If you do those three things, your online influence will take care of itself. Now, before I open it up to Sal, I'll turn it back over to Sal and we'll take questions. I want to mention one last story for you. It's one of my favorite stories of these people that I call the citizen influencers. We're in the era, a revolutionary era of the citizen influencer. And this young lady is Molly Catchpole. Last year, Molly graduated from college, and like so many people, she couldn't find a job, and she really was running into trouble. In fact, it was a crisis because as soon as she graduated, she had to start paying back her student loans. So to do that, she just scrambled to find any kind of part-time work she could find just to start paying back her bills. And in fact, she took on a job as a part-time nanny. Well, one day she got a letter in the mail from Bank of America, one of the largest and most important banks in the world. And it said, "Dear Miss Catchpole, we've created a new policy. And if you can't keep an average daily balance of $20,000 in your bank account, we're going to charge you a $5 fee every month just to access your money." Well, she had had enough. She just thought this was so unfair. So she started to tweet about it. She started to post about it, to blog about it. And she learned about this application called change.org, where she could start a petition. Within 2 weeks, 300,000 people had signed her petition. And within 3 weeks, Bank of America changed their policy. This 22-year-old young lady, this part-time nanny, had stopped one of the biggest banks in the world in their tracks, because this is her time. This is my time. And this is your time too. This is your time to take advantage of the amazing time we're living in and find your return on influence.